The night my mother-in-law handed me divorce papers at my own anniversary dinner, I thought that would be the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. What happened 3 hours later in the parking lot of St. Mary's Hospital would haunt me for decades. But to understand how I ended up bleeding on that cold concrete, 5 months pregnant and completely alone, you need to hear everything from the beginning. I met my husband Thomas at a 4th of July barbecue in Austin, Texas, in 1981. I was 24 years old, fresh out of nursing school, working the night shift at a small clinic on the south side of town. He was 29, a rising sales manager at a car dealership, and he had the kind of smile that made you forget your own name. When he handed me a drink and asked if I believed in love at first sight, I laughed and told him that was the worst pickup line I had ever heard. He laughed too and said he would have to try harder then. And he did. Oh, how he tried. Thomas courted me like I was a princess in a fairy tale. He sent flowers to the clinic every week. He wrote me letters, actual handwritten letters, telling me how he counted the minutes until he could see me again. He took me dancing, and when I stepped on his feet because I had no rhythm whatsoever, he just pulled me closer and whispered that he would teach me. My mama said I had found one of the good ones. My sister said I was the luckiest woman in Texas. Every friend I had was jealous. They said Thomas treated me like I was made of gold. What nobody knew, what I did not know, was that gold can be a prison too. We got married in September of 1982. It was a beautiful ceremony at my family's church, followed by a reception at Thomas's mother's estate outside the city. Her name was Vivian, and she lived in a sprawling house that her late husband had built for her before he passed. Thomas was her only child, her pride and joy, and she made it clear from the moment we met that no woman would ever be good enough for her son. But I tried. Lord knows I tried. The first year of marriage was like living in two different worlds. At work, I was competent and confident. Doctors respected my opinion. Patients trusted me with their lives. But at home, I became someone I did not recognize. Someone who second-guessed every decision. Someone who apologized for existing. It started small. Thomas did not like how I arranged the dishes in the cabinet. He did not like the brand of coffee I bought. He did not like my friends. Said they were a bad influence. Said they did not understand what it meant to be a proper wife. One by one, I stopped seeing them. I told myself it was because I was busy, because married life required adjustments, because Thomas knew what was best for us. Then came Vivian's weekly visits. She would arrive every Sunday afternoon, white gloves and all, and inspect my housekeeping like a drill sergeant. She found dust on the windowsills that I could not see. She found streaks on mirrors that looked perfectly clean to me. She found fault with my cooking, my cleaning, my clothes, my hair, my voice, my laugh, my very existence. Once, she found a small stain on one of Thomas's work shirts. She held it up like evidence in a murder trial and asked how I expected her son to succeed in business when his wife could not even do laundry correctly. Thomas was standing right there. He did not defend me. He just looked disappointed and said maybe I needed to pay more attention to my responsibilities. That night, I cried myself to sleep for the first time in my marriage. It would not be the last. By our second anniversary, the criticism had evolved into something darker. Thomas started coming home angry, looking for reasons to explode. If dinner was too hot, he threw his plate against the wall. If it was too cold, he accused me of not caring about him. If the house was too quiet, I was boring. If I tried to make conversation, I was annoying. I could not win. The rules kept changing, and I was always losing a game I did not know how to play. The first time Thomas put his hands on me was 2.5 years into our marriage. I had forgotten to pick up his dry cleaning because I had worked a double shift after a coworker called in sick. When he discovered his suits were not in the closet, he grabbed my wrist and twisted it so hard I heard something pop. He looked me straight in the eyes and said that if I ever embarrassed him like that again, I would regret it. I wore long sleeves for 3 weeks until the bruises faded. I told myself it was my fault. I told myself I should have remembered. I told myself it was just once and it would never happen again. I was so young. I was so desperate to believe in the man I had married. In 1985, I discovered I was pregnant. For a brief moment, hope flickered inside me like a candle in a dark room. Maybe a baby would change things. Maybe becoming a father would soften Thomas. Maybe Vivian would finally see me as a valuable member of the family instead of an intruder. My daughter was born in January of 1986. I named her Emily, after my grandmother who had passed when I was a girl. She was 7 pounds, 6 ounces, with Thomas's dark eyes and my mother's chin. When I held her for the first time, I made a silent promise that I would protect her from everything, from everyone. But keeping that promise was harder than I ever imagined. Thomas resented Emily from the beginning. He resented the attention she needed, the sleep she cost us, the way she changed our routine. He started staying out late, claiming work obligations that I knew were lies. When he was home, he was either ignoring us completely or finding new reasons to criticize me. My body had not bounced back fast enough. The house was messier than before. Emily cried too much. Everything was my fault. And Vivian made sure to remind me of it every single week. She would hold Emily and coo at her, then look at me with cold eyes and say things like, "At least the child takes after Thomas," or "I hope she does not inherit your clumsiness," or "Some women just are not meant to be mothers, but let us hope for the best." I started to believe her. I started to believe I was the problem. I started to believe that if I could just be better, try harder, do more, everything would be okay. The violence got worse after Emily turned 1. Thomas learned that hitting me in places that showed was risky. He learned that threats were sometimes more effective than fists. He learned that all he had to do was look at Emily a certain way, and I would comply with anything he wanted. He took control of all our money. He said it was because I was bad with finances, but the truth was he wanted to make sure I could never leave. My paychecks went into his account. I had to ask permission to buy groceries. He gave me an allowance like I was a child, and if I overspent by even $1, there were consequences. I thought about leaving. Of course I thought about leaving. But where would I go? My parents had both passed by then. My sister had moved to California, and we barely spoke anymore because Thomas had convinced me she was toxic. I had no friends left. I had no money of my own, and I had a toddler who needed stability. So I stayed. I survived. I prayed that somehow, someday, something would change. In the spring of 1988, I discovered I was pregnant again. I had not planned it. Thomas and I barely had a relationship anymore, just cold, silent coexistence, punctuated by moments of terror. But the test was positive, and I had to tell him. His reaction was not what I expected. He was pleased. He wanted a son this time, an heir to carry on his name. He said this pregnancy would give me a chance to redeem myself. He said he was willing to give our marriage another try if I could finally be the wife he deserved. His good mood lasted until I started showing. Then Vivian's comments became more vicious, and Thomas's temper became shorter, and I found myself walking on eggshells every single day. The stress was affecting my health. My doctor told me I needed to rest more, worry less, take care of myself. I did not tell her that rest was impossible, and worry was my constant companion, and taking care of myself was a luxury I could not afford. Which brings me to that night in October of 1988. Our 5th wedding anniversary. Vivian had insisted on hosting a dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. She said it was her gift to us, a celebration of half a decade of marriage. I knew better. I knew she just wanted an audience for whatever performance she had planned. Thomas made me wear a dress that no longer fit properly because of my pregnant belly. He said I looked fine and that I should stop complaining. Vivian looked me up and down when we arrived and sighed heavily but said nothing. Emily stayed home with a babysitter. I remember kissing her goodbye and feeling a knot in my stomach that I could not explain. The dinner started normally enough. Vivian ordered expensive wine that I could not drink. Thomas talked about his work and his ambitions. I sat quietly, cutting my food into small pieces and trying to be invisible. I had learned that being invisible was the safest option. Then, between the main course and dessert, Vivian reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. She slid it across the table to Thomas with a smile that made my blood run cold. "I had my lawyer draw these up," she said. "I think it is time." Thomas opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. His expression did not change as he read them. Then he looked at me with those dark eyes and said, "My mother is right. This is not working. Sign the papers and we can make this easy. Or do not sign and I will make sure you never see Emily again." I could not breathe. I could not think. I looked at the papers and saw the word divorce at the top. I looked at Vivian and saw triumph in her eyes. I looked at my husband of 5 years and saw a stranger. "You cannot do this," I whispered. "I am pregnant. You cannot just throw me away." Vivian laughed. "That is exactly why we need to do this now, before the child is born. Thomas deserves better. He has always deserved better. And frankly, we are not even sure that baby is his." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I had never been unfaithful. I had never even looked at another man. But Vivian said it so casually, so confidently, that I knew she had already been planting seeds of doubt in Thomas's mind. Thomas pushed the papers toward me. "Sign them tonight. My lawyer is waiting to file tomorrow." I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. People at other tables turned to look. I did not care. I grabbed my purse and walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I heard Thomas call my name, but I kept walking. I heard Vivian say something about making a scene, but I kept walking. I walked out into the cool October night, and I kept walking until I reached the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely find my car keys. My vision was blurry with tears. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest. I managed to unlock my car and get inside. I sat there in the dark, trying to catch my breath, trying to figure out what to do next. I had no money. I had no place to go. I had a daughter at home and a baby on the way and a husband who wanted to erase me from his life like I had never existed. Then I heard the tap on my window. It was Thomas. His face was calm, but his eyes were not. I knew that look. I knew what that look meant. "Open the door," he said. I shook my head. "Open the door now, or I will break the window." My hand moved to the lock before my brain could stop it. The door opened and Thomas grabbed my arm, yanking me out of the car. I stumbled on the uneven pavement, and he caught me, but not to help me. He caught me so he could push me against the side of the car, his forearm pressed against my throat. "You think you can embarrass me like that?" he hissed. "You think you can walk away from me?" "Thomas, please," I choked out. "The baby." He did not care about the baby. In that moment, I do not think he cared about anything except his own rage. He drew back his fist and hit me in the stomach. The pain was instant and overwhelming. I doubled over, and he let me fall. I hit the concrete hard, scraping my hands and knees. I felt wetness spreading between my legs. I felt something tearing loose inside me. When I looked up, Thomas was standing over me with his fist raised for another blow, but he never landed it. Because a voice cut through the night. A woman's voice, loud and commanding. "Step away from her right now, or I will call the police." Thomas froze. He turned and saw a woman standing about 20 feet away, her phone already in her hand. She was wearing scrubs under a light jacket. A hospital employee, probably on her way to her car after a late shift. "This is none of your business," Thomas said. The woman did not back down. "I am a nurse at St. Mary's. I know what domestic violence looks like, and I know that woman is pregnant and bleeding. So you can either step away and let me help her, or you can explain to the police why you are standing over your injured wife in a parking lot." Thomas looked at me. He looked at the nurse. He looked at his own fist, still raised in the air. Then he lowered his arm, straightened his tie, and walked away without another word. Just walked away. Like I was nothing. Like I had always been nothing. The nurse rushed over to me. Her name was Diane, and she had brown hair streaked with gray and the kindest eyes I had ever seen. She helped me sit up, assessed my injuries with practiced hands, and called for an ambulance on her phone. "You are going to be okay," she kept saying. "You and your baby are going to be okay. I have got you now." I do not remember much about the ambulance ride. I remember bright lights and voices asking questions and pain, so much pain. I remember crying for Emily and praying for the baby inside me. I remember Diane holding my hand and refusing to let go. At the hospital, doctors worked to stop the bleeding. The baby was in distress, but still alive. They managed to stabilize us both, but I would need to stay for observation. They told me how lucky I was. A few more minutes without help and the outcome could have been very different. Diane stayed with me. She was supposed to go home hours ago, but she stayed. She sat beside my bed and listened as the whole story poured out of me. 6 years of abuse, the controlling behavior, the violence, the isolation, the fear. I told her things I had never told anyone, and she did not flinch. She did not judge. She just listened. When I finished, she took my hand and said, "There is a social worker here named Patricia. She helps women in situations like yours. Would you be willing to talk to her?" I thought about Emily at home with the babysitter, probably wondering where her mommy was. I thought about the baby fighting for survival inside me. I thought about Thomas coming back tomorrow, pretending nothing happened, expecting me to forget just like I always forgot. "Yes," I said, "I will talk to her." What followed was the hardest and bravest thing I have ever done. Patricia helped me understand my options. She connected me with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases. She helped me document everything: the hospital records, the old injuries I had hidden, the financial control, the threats. She helped me find a shelter where Emily and I could stay while I figured out my next steps. Thomas came to the hospital the next morning with flowers and apologies. He said he had lost his temper. He said the stress of his mother's interference had gotten to him. He said it would never happen again. He said all the things he had said 100 times before. But this time, I did not believe him. "I know, Thomas," I said. "I know things are going to be different now." He smiled, thinking he had won again. He had no idea that police were waiting in the hallway. He had no idea that I had already given my statement. He had no idea that his perfect image was about to shatter into a million pieces. When the officers came in and told Thomas he was being detained for questioning regarding domestic assault, his face went white. He looked at me with such shock, such betrayal, like I was the one who had wronged him. He looked at me like he could not believe I had finally fought back. Vivian tried to intervene, of course. She showed up at the hospital demanding to see me, demanding that I drop the charges, threatening everything from custody battles to financial ruin. But Patricia had prepared me for this. Security escorted Vivian out of the building while she screamed that I was destroying her son's life. I was not destroying his life. I was saving mine. My son was born in February of 1989, healthy despite everything. I named him Daniel, which means God is my judge, because in the end, that is the only judgment that matters. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got full custody of both children. Thomas got supervised visitation and a restraining order that kept him 200 feet away from us at all times. Vivian was explicitly forbidden from being present during any visits. She never forgave me for that. She spent years trying to turn people against me, spreading lies about my character, my mental health, my fitness as a mother. But the truth has a way of outlasting lies. The people who mattered saw through her. The people who mattered stood by me. I went back to school while working part-time at the shelter where I had once been a resident. I got my degree in counseling and spent the next 20 years helping other women escape the situations I had escaped. I testified at trials. I sat with women in emergency rooms. I held hands and dried tears and said the words Diane and Patricia had said to me. "You are going to be okay. You are not alone. You deserve better than this." Thomas remarried twice after our divorce. Both marriages ended the same way ours did. I know because both women found me through the shelter, looking for someone who understood what they had been through. I helped them the way I had been helped. The cycle continued, but so did the healing. Vivian died 12 years ago. I did not attend the funeral. Neither did my children. Some relationships are too broken to mend, and forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. I have made my peace with that. Thomas passed away 5 years ago, a car accident on a rainy highway. When Emily called to tell me, I felt nothing but a strange emptiness. Not grief, not relief, just the quiet closing of a very long chapter. Emily is 40 now, a pediatrician with a practice in Houston. She has 2 children of her own and a husband who treats her like an equal partner. She tells me that watching me survive taught her what strength really looks like. She tells me that her happy marriage is built on the foundation of everything I showed her not to accept. Daniel became a social worker, just like Patricia. He runs a nonprofit that provides legal aid to domestic violence survivors. Every time I see him speak at a conference or read about his work in the news, I think about that night in the hospital parking lot. I think about Diane's voice cutting through the darkness. I think about how close I came to losing everything. I am 67 years old now. I live in a little house in the hill country with a garden full of bluebonnets and a cat named Hope. I have grandchildren who call me Nana and think I am the bravest woman they know. I have friends who have seen my scars, inside and out, and love me anyway. I have a peace that I never thought possible. If you are watching this, and you recognize yourself in my story, I need you to hear me. I know it feels impossible. I know you think you cannot leave. I know you are exhausted and afraid and broken in places that nobody else can see. But you are not broken beyond repair. You are just bent, and bent things can straighten with time and care and help. There are people who will believe you. There are places that will take you in. There are resources that exist specifically to help you take that first impossible step. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They will listen. They will help you make a plan. They will not judge you for staying as long as you did or for being afraid to leave now. You deserve better than being someone's punching bag. You deserve better than being told you are worthless by people who should love you. You deserve better than living in constant fear. And you can have better. I promise you that. It will not be easy. It will be the hardest thing you have ever done. But on the other side of that hard is a freedom you cannot even imagine right now. I know because I walked that path. I know because I am standing on the other side. My name is Catherine Marie Sullivan. I was a victim for 6 years, but I have been a survivor for over 35 more, and every single day of freedom has been worth every single struggle it took to get here. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Your story does not have to end in that parking lot, in that hospital, in that house where you feel trapped. Your story ends wherever you decide it ends. And if you decide it ends with you walking out that door and never looking back, then that is exactly what will happen. Because you have more power than they want you to believe. You just have to reach for it. Trust me, reach for it. I did, and it saved my life. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. We share stories like this every week because we believe that every survivor deserves to have their voice heard. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, please share this video with them. You never know whose life you might help save. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And remember, no matter what you are going through, you are strong enough to get through it. You just have to take that first step.